Just in, a new poll by Quinnipiac University shows only 40% of American voters think President Trump is fit to serve in that office. 57% say he is not, as the president's approval ratings hover near an all-time low. So what does it mean? Let's talk about it with Chris Wilson, a former Cruz campaign pollster and CEO of WPA Intelligence. Also with us, Scott Bolden, a Democratic strategist and former D.C. Democratic Party chairman. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, you're the pollster. If you're in the White House and looking at those numbers, they don't sound very good.
Well, they don't, but this sort of fitness to serve, it's a red herring question when it gets down to it. I mean, the fact is that you've had for a long time, most Republicans like the job Donald Trump is doing, most Democrats don't like the job he's doing, and you can ask any sort of question and you're going to get those same kind of numbers, whether it's asked fitness to serve or whether you just like Donald Trump as president. And really what Quinnipiac does, and it's a tendency with polling firms, I mean, we do it if we're trying to get picked up on Fox News and have you talk about our polling, John, is ask these shock value kind of questions. And really what reflects is the fact that it is more of it's a reflection of the Twitter outrage of the day with Trump, and that's what these numbers are more of a indication of than whether or not he's fit to serve or not.
Scott, you have been a candidate for political office. I mean, if voters were asked, whether you were fit to serve, you'd be probably kind of offended by that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, coupled with the approval ratings, which all pollsters know are super important, fit to serve is right up there with it. I got to tell you, these numbers are real, and while we're still in 2017, what stuck out at me about these numbers is that white voters were split on whether he was fit to serve, but independents were 60%. They didn't think he was fit to serve. But then if you go to the other part of the polls where they talk about approval ratings and what have you, the numbers are very similar. He's at the 35% approval rating generally in this country, and that's got to be problematic and bothersome. Now, the GOP needs him to turn these numbers around because of 2018 and 2020, but the real problem is that he's giving them a steady flow of who Trump is on a daily basis. You've got the Russian investigation and all these other issues, and the question is, how does the president turn it around?
Well, and one of the questions too, Chris, is does the president even care what the polls say? We know what the polls said before his election. And he said, look, that they didn't think I was going to win because they were wrong, and they're probably wrong now.
Well, I think the president has shown a good job of sort of selectively picking the polls that he likes and those that he doesn't like. But, to Scott's point, he's right in that it's an indication of where independents are as to how these numbers move one way or the other.
Independents win elections, right? Or decide elections.
That's absolutely right. And what it gets down to is if you ask specifically about Trump's policies and remove his name from it, you find that there's a good indication that they like the job he is doing and like what he's accomplishing. But when you start dealing with his persona, that's what drives the numbers down overall. So if you could separate Trump's actions from a policy perspective from his persona, then you get good numbers back. But when you add that persona back on, that's whenever you see these sort of the 40% and mid-30 kind of numbers that I don't think he likes to see.
But go ahead.
I'm sorry, but it's hard to separate Trump because he sucks the air out of every room and every policy or political discussion. But here's the other thing that's really troublesome if I was a member of the GOP, and that is this, that his base of voters, right, is at 35 to 40% who will vote for him no matter what. His electoral base was that base as well as independents or moderate or independent Democrats who said they couldn't vote for Hillary Clinton. In 2020, he's got to have that same electoral base, that totality to win, and in 2018 the GOP needs the same, and it's not clear from these numbers that they're there yet.
Chris, are those the 35 to 40% that Scott's talking about, are those the same 40 million people who are following the president on Twitter?
Well, there's not a single undecided voter on Twitter. Anybody spending time on Twitter trying to persuade voters is wasting their time when it gets down to. But look, 2018 gets down to getting those Trump voters out, the people who elected him and made the difference for him in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Ohio and Wisconsin. Getting those voters out in 2018 is the key to the Republican Party. And what's interesting, if you look at Virginia last week, that happened in Southwest Virginia, but it didn't happen in other areas. And so I think it's a really good lesson for Republicans running in 2018 that if you want to win, you've got to go out and appeal to those sort of Democrat Trump voters that elected him president, because if you don't, you're going to lose pretty overwhelmingly when we get to Election Day in about a year.
Yeah, only a year away.
But those state Republicans, state Republicans are going to have to thread the needle too as to whether they want to be associated with Trump or not, depending on their election and where they are in the state.
Scott Bolden, Chris Wilson, good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.